Welcome back to the Always Right podcast. I'm Karisa DeLay, and this is
Jaime Vendera. I didn't think we were coming back. I thought we were done.
Oh no, you're not
Okay.
done with no.
All right. No, I'm happy to be here.
All right. This episode we have titled basically Where to Begin. This is how we went from inspiration to page. And last time I kind of started with who I was, and then we went to Jamie. This time I'm going to make Jamie start.
Okay. So for me, it was rough. I mean, when I wrote this book, Raise Your Voice, this is the first one. This is actually really what helped my career as a vocal coach with all I do. And again, I said in the last podcast how I had been studying voice and getting different products back in the 90s. And I was like, wow, some of these really aren't that good. I could write a book. And it just stayed with me. I have always been a note taker since I was a kid. If I really wanted to learn something, whether it was algebra or writing skills, I would get just a regular notepad and with a pen. And I would, instead of highlighting, and I love to highlight too, but if I was reading something and it stuck out to me from studying for school, I would write it down. And people thought I was nuts. They're like, why do you do that? It implants it in my brain. So I did that for years when I studied voice out at in Hollywood, California at Musicians Institute. We had everything printed out, but I nearly copied everything because those were my notes and it stuck. So I had all these notebooks and I'd read all these vocal books, even far as back as the 1800s. I'd go to the library and find whatever I could and take information. So that was sort of my start for my inspiration, because finally in January 2000, I was like, you know what, I'm going to write a book. And I woke up and I had that dream and the name Raise Your Voice stuck out. And I thought, okay, how can I do this? How can I stay on board? Well, for me, since it was a nonfiction book, it was more about like lining it out. Like if I had to get up in front of the class and do a presentation in school, I like bullet points. So, A, B, C, D. So for me, it was like, who am I? Here's breathing. Here's vocal technique. Here's how to sing. Here's how to use a microphone. And I laid it out like that. And I'm just very analytical, even though I'm very creative. And so I would set an alarm really early in the morning, like 5 a.m. And I would get up and I would write.
Not me.
Yeah, it worked for me. You know what? I don't even do that anymore. Now it's just like when it hits me. The problem is if I'm writing a book, I really need to hey, students, I'm going to take a vocal vacation. I'm not teaching this week because I will write 24/7. I get so into the story. I don't want to do anything else, or even I don't even want to eat. I just want to write. So that's what would happen for me.
Sorry, I do not skip meals ever.
Well, if you look at me lately, you can tell I don't skip any meals either. Yeah. But generally, I would have it. And even back then, because, computers were popular, even then, 20 years ago, I wouldn't type. I would be working construction. I'd take my notebook. And if something came to my mind, I would write it out by hands. So then over the weekend or later on night, I'd move it and type it and transcribe it into my computer. And I build it like that for a long time. So for me, it was more discipline than it was inspiration, because as long as I get started, I can't keep up with my mindset. Things flow.
With Raise Your Voice, I mean, you said you woke up, you had this dream of this Raise Your Voice title, but what inspired you to the content of it?
Because so the cat's out of the bag. Actually, a lot of people know this, but I had voice lessons back in the 80s at a local college. And I shall not mention the coach's name because I love her dearly, but she had said to me in the last lesson that we ever did, she says, Jamie, you're a bass. You can't sing high. You're never going to be able to sing high. You need to get over it. And I was already playing out in bars and singing Guns N' Roses and Motley Crue. And I thought, okay, I know there's a way to increase your range. So that's what I focused on. So Raise Your Voice was about raising your ability to gain range, gain power, stamina, improve your tone. I just wanted to have a manual, pardon me, that I didn't have growing up. Something that was really simple and it was easy to do with basic exercises that could really help me, like I was going to the gym. And that's what drove my creativity for that book.
Oh, see, there you go.
She pulled it out of me.
Yes, I did. And then so you had this, and then you talk about how you got to the page as far as just kind of like putting those notes in there and stuff. Now, that was your first book.
Yep.
How is that different than now if you write something today?
Okay, and I want to say this since we're early on the podcast, you hear my voice going out. And I'm a coach, and you're probably thinking, "Oh, he's got bad technique." No, I I break glass with my voice, and I actually got a piece stuck in my throat in Tokyo, Japan years ago. So I have a recurrent laryngeal nerve damage. So you may hear my voice come in and out. It's just that's the side effect of having nerve damage and scar tissue like that. So I do know what I'm doing when it comes to teaching. So it has changed a lot. So this is like the first fiction book I wrote. This is Order of Five. And I actually had a partner at the time inspire me. He does my interior design. His name is Daniel Middleton from Scribe Freelance. And he actually, he knew I had a creative mind. And I was always telling him stories. And he's like, we should write some fiction together. And he is the one who introduced me to using Google Docs. So this was back in 2008. Huge difference for me. Autosave, and I didn't have to think about it. And I was being really particular when we started writing the first chapter of this book. We were kind of plotting it out together, and I'm really slow. I can't figure it out. And then maybe a couple weeks in, it's not that he was upset, but he said, Jamie, I can't keep having these long Skype meetings with you, and we get like a paragraph done in an hour. You have to think outside the box. He said, just let it flow like when you write song lyrics. And when I write song lyrics, I don't even think about it. They just come to me. So I started thinking, and I felt like I was watching a television show. And I just start writing. And he said, do not worry about the typos. Thankfully, because you know me, and you've read a lot of my texts, tons of typos. But the process has changed from meticulously taking my time to craft the perfect sentence and writing it by hand in a book to being in something like Google Docs, and as the ideas are coming, I'm writing. I may not even finish sentences. I'll come back because I'm like, oh, this person, they just busted through a window in my fiction book. Okay, I got to write that
If you
out.
ever want to know how a squirrel writes?
This is it. This is it. But it works for me. And luckily, I mean, we'll talk about this in future podcasts, but we have an amazing editor that we use, Rich Dalglish. And it's funny because Rich has edited all of my fiction books. Now, I used to use a lot of pen names. Didn't want anybody to know it was me because, I write nonfiction and I focus on vocal training. So at one point in time, Daniel was getting too busy with Scribe, so he kind of left that side of it. And I called Rich. I said, look, Daniel's leaving. We're going to continue. I got a lot of editing for you to do. And I said, I know that I write all these books because, like when I'm pretending to be Jamie Lynn Saunders writing a book about mermaids, you've gotten on me. He's like, oh, Jamie's immature and she needs to work on this. So I take his critiques. I'm
Yes.
like, okay, I'll fix it. And then he said to me, wow, she's so much better in her next book. She did amazing. She really listened to me. And I thought he was just playing along with me. So when I called him and told him that, he said, no, back up. Wait a minute. You're Drusilla Winters. You're writing horror. You're Gordon Massey. You're writing this. You're Jamie Lynn Saunders. He said, there is no way. I said, yeah. He said, okay, I'm freaking out. I can't believe you can change fiction writing styles that well.
Changing your vocal voice in writing is not an easy task to do. I mean, because a lot of times people, and we have an episode where we're going to get into like making your voice consistent and make sure you just identify your voice. Like, is your character going to be?
That's where you're really
like a 14-year-old girl versus a 30-year-old woman.
So I hope you can hear
and
me.
how is she going to sound? So
but
you as an art author, that's pretty good that you could do that already.
Yeah, and I don't know if you heard because you've frozen on my end, so there might be a little crisscross here. But that's what I love about you, too. You have been able to switch from a fantasy-type fiction to an actual nonfiction book closely related to a completely different genre.
Yeah.
And you think about so many authors and they're like, they have one lane. They only write Westerns, cowboy novels, or
There's nothing wrong with that.
There's nothing wrong with that. There was a stigma about it years ago, like, oh, you can't. Stephen King, he used to use some pen names because, he may not be writing, deep horror.
Right.
And now it's more accepted. And you got to realize, don't pigeonhole yourself. I got Netflix and Hulu and Disney and all these. Why? Because I love to binge watch all these different types of shows, and I get into it. Like right now, you want to smack me? You watch it. I'm watching Supergirl, and then it may be.
Why would I be mad about that?
I'm talking to our readers. They're like, he's a middle guy, so he's watching Supergirl. He should be watching Sons of Anarchy. I've already finished it. So
you know what my gamer tag is, right?
No.
My gamer tag on Destiny on Xbox is Kara Zor-El.
Well, I don't know because I don't play video games.
Yeah, so I forgot to say about that, but I am a gamer. Yeah, so and I have my Superman tattoo right there.
Well, see, it works for you, but I figured any of my vocal followers on here is like, man, he works with Mudvayne and Flat Black and I Prevail. He can't be into Supergirl.
That's a very terrible opinion that people that all superheroes. I mean, I watch male superheroes. Should you not be allowed to watch girl superheroes?
No, that's just superheroes in general. I should be watching Sons of Anarchy and something cool.
Oh, I listen to NF, Starset, and Kaleo. And
Starset.
You know who that is.
Okay. I don't even want to hear what you're going to say about our book signing because I know it's on your mind.
Oh, I wasn't even thinking about that, but yes, since you brought it up. Jamie, I had a book signing, and Jamie brought his books too, and we had a book signing in Columbus, Ohio. At the Book Loft, which is an amazing spot. If you've never been to the Book Loft and you go to Columbus, Ohio because you want to go watch an OSU game or something, you have to go to German Village. You have to go, I think it's 3rd Street, and you have to go to the Book Loft. There's like 32 rooms or something like that. It's like Baskin Robbins of books.
Yeah, it is like a book nerd's dream.
And you're in this maze, and at some point you have to call your friend and say, hey, where are you? I think you're loading. I don't know what's going. There we go. Yeah, there's it's great. But Jamie came with me to my book signing, and all of a sudden someone I didn't know, because I'm not in that world. Like my focus is another part. And comes Dustin Bates and his drummer. And they had
I don't think it was him. I can't remember.
I thought it was his
producer. No, maybe it was.
It's his drummer. My memory's better than yours.
Is that like a shot at me because I'm old?
No, it's because I've dealt with your memory.
Yeah, so Dustin's my student. He sings for Starset, and I'm
and he had like a Tesla tattoo. I didn't know anything about his music at the time. I didn't know anything about him, so I was not one of the super. There's some amazing fans he has online, but I wasn't one of those people because he wasn't on my radar. But he had a Tesla tattoo, and my book deals with this book here. Talks about Tesla and the torsion energy. And I even had a Tesla engineer from Serbia help me with some of the making sure the sciences were right when I wrote that. But so I instantly saw a way to sell him a book. And he bought my book. And then Jamie's like, wait, what? You're going to buy her book? Not mine.
Yeah, that bastard. But he's probably thinking because he gives me free T-shirts and this and that. And I'm pretty sure I slipped him a copy. I think it was Mind Over Music because I was already defeated. I think you and I were having a contest. It was like
I sold
31-4 or something. I don't know. I give up.
More. Yeah, I did. But I have that gift to sell fire to the devil sometimes when it comes. If I know what I can't sell certain things because I don't know anything about them. But if I believe in something, I can sell you some hair products. I can sell you a tattoo. I can sell you a book. Like I got things I can sell you if I can stand behind it myself. But yeah.
So back to the topic. I go with the flow. If I'm into writing a book, I'll get up early. I'm involved in it. I live, I breathe. I'm in that world.
Yeah.
That's the world I exist at, like watching a Netflix series. What is your process? I mean, what keeps you going?
I mean, and I'm very busy. I'm one of those people that I've always got my hands. I can't sit still. So I'm doing everything but trying to clean my house. That's what I'm doing. So let's go for my first book. My first book, which I'm going to show for those of you who can't see this, we will have this on our socials and stuff when we load the actual video. If you can't see it on the podcast, obviously. But this one was my first here. This is the hardback of Crystal Gate. This came to me in a dream in December of 2011. I literally had a dream that the devil fell in love with a mortal, but the mortal chains couldn't bind him. So it was more of a long journey of him trying to find something to reset Eden. And then when he gets to the point where he has to choose reset Eden and be uncursed, or do I choose someone I fell in love with and take my powers off Earth? He has free agency to choose. So you follow this journey, and you see the evil, but then you see how humble, even the devil has to become, to choose something over what he wanted, like his own whatever. So that turned into a 2-book series. Now, my process from inspiration to writing went from having the dream to telling my husband. I remember he was in his closet trying to get dressed for work. I'm like, I had this dream, because he worked night shifts. So when he was going to work, I was going to bed, or he was coming home from work and I was getting up from my dream. And I said, I had this dream. It sounds like a really cool story. I think I want to write a book. He's like, all right, do it. So what I do, I went out and bought one of I think it was this first generation iPad. And I used it to type everything. Like, you could turn it sideways. And I typed everything on that. Because at the time, in 2011, I had 3 babies under the age of 3. Almost 4. Well, 4. So I had one, but I had one nursing. So I had 2 that were running around, and 1 I was still nursing. So I would literally be up all night long. And so I would be nursing a baby, and then I would still be awake. I'm like, I'm just going to write a chapter. I would be baking cakes, because I used to bake cakes for people in town and stuff, and do all that decorative stuff. And when I would do that, I would be thinking of a storyline, and I would just go write it down. I would be like, oh, I think about it through the day, and I would go write it down at night. So I just imagine my characters. And so that's kind of how my process went from inspiration and having that dream to 9 months later being completely done with 450 pages and talking to you, and then deciding to go self-publish. So that's where I started. Now my process has changed, because my second book took about 11 months. I learned to write a little bit better, because even though I went self-publishing, you gave me contacts for Rich. So I paid Rich to help me edit. And I learned a little bit more about writing, because I was not a writer. I was an artist. So for me, creating sentences and proper grammar was not my thing. Still not my thing. But in a future podcast, I'll explain to you how I make it easier on myself. But what?
How do I make it easier on myself?
Well, I'm trying to make it easier on Rich too, because I feel like sometimes it could be nerve-wracking for my editor to be like, has she learned nothing? Has she learned nothing? So, and he did tell me after my second book, he said, I can tell you listened, because the editing was way better. Now here's a few things that you need to work on, which book editing, which we'll also talk about, is completely different than editing your English paper. It's not the same. There's a whole different process to way a book flows versus how a story you write in school would be.
Yeah, he said the same thing to me, and even like we have quite a few on our team. And I when I started, I worked with a girl named Molly Burnside, who does my nonfiction covers, but she was very aesthetic too. Like, I'd show her my layout in the book, and not that she was an editor, but she's read through. It was like, yeah, man, you you really need to fix this, and you need to change the picture. So there is an entire process.
And that's one thing you have to put on as an author, is you need to learn how to take criticism, because someone is not going to share criticism unless they're trying to help you.
Yeah, you know what? I've always been cool with that, but the one time I was mad was with Rich. We had written this book called The Crisis Artifact, and we like to write short books so you can read them quick. And it was 40-something, like 43,000 words. It wasn't huge. And he edited it. And when I got it back, it was 28,000 words. And I'm like,
what did you
what? I about had a stroke. And I'm calling Daniel, and I'm like, okay, I do not like this guy. I'm mad. And he says, just read it. And I did. I didn't miss anything. There was one tiny little scene that I added in a paragraph about a little girl, and she was scared because a bottle was rolling and a cat had kicked it in this alleyway. And I asked her, she said it didn't really serve the story. She said it was cute, but it wasn't moving the story along. That's why I pulled it. And I had to be mad about something. I'm like, well, I don't like it. It should be in there. We're putting it back in there. And eventually it just got overthrown. We didn't do it. But looking back, wow. I mean, it smooths everything out. And he'll even tell you, he'll laugh. He's like, yeah, they call me the butcher, but hey.
I went from 125,000 words in my first book to like a little over 100,000. So he took almost 25,000 words out. And I was like, what? Where's my words? And then when you go through, the cool thing about Rich was you could see what he was taking out and you'd be like, nope, I don't agree with that one. Put that one back in.
Yep.
But you're right. Like most of the stuff, like it was like, was that really important? No, it doesn't go to the story. I mean, it might be something. I mean, sometimes when I'm watching Netflix, I'm just like, was that important? Am I following this part of the story for a reason? So I get that.
And if you think monetarily, it's going to be cheaper to print a 100,000 word page book compared to 125,000.
Yes.
So, you have to think of like that. So don't be married to everything you write, and you will.
Yes.
That first book, you'll be very sensitive.
Yes, that first book is your baby. You are going to want to keep and hold on to every single little word. And don't do that because not every single little word needs to stay. So I don't know if if it's my internet or your internet that's uploading weird, but it keeps loading. So I hopefully for the recording that keeps it in there. And when you go back and check it, see if that's, doing its thing. So now my writing process then was write it in my iPad in Pages, and I had a book outline set up, so I was able to put it all in there and just ship it off to Rich, and go to that point, get it into to self-published print, which this is the self-published, okay, and it's a hardback. If you do this and you do and I did it in paperback, so expensive to buy a book and to get it to this this type of quality where it's like, if you want it to look like it's published and not self-published, and I mean, I say that lightly because sometimes there is a difference in quality. This is the second version of the same book through Vendera. So this is after it's been out for a while. This is after I had several. Daniel put some of the comments that were on the Amazon that people had said about my book, so he put that on the back there. So there is this. They're literally like almost the same when it comes to like quality. This one was more expensive as a self-published than what I pay for if I was to order a bunch of books through being an author with Vendera and wanting to buy them for like a book signing or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, but luckily I got into this way early on, and it's not this way anymore. So I'm a smaller publisher. Nowadays, you cannot sign on to the company that we use, which is Lightning Source, and they're owned by Baker and Taylor, and so we have amazing distribution throughout the world. But back then, like when you did it, yes, there are certain houses that work for authors, and yeah, you pay out the butt for it. So you got to think about all of this, and we will discuss this as we go into future podcasts.
Yeah. And so now I'm writing a completely different genre. And I've learned from these two books. So if you ever read my books, if you get on there and you're reading my books, please just know I was learning to write in these. I had a story in my head and I wanted to get them out. I was not a writer in that time frame when I first started, and I wasn't a perfect version of the story that if I could do it over again, I would probably rewrite these. I might do that like Taylor's version, Karisa's version. Down the road, you never know. But like up here, this is the upcoming book that's coming out, Canvassed. So I am writing this one completely different. Like this one is almost like a protective shield on it because every chapter has a note to it. I have several notes that I keep on this one. I have like outlines. I have character references. I have what type of voice this character has. I have so many notes. So as I'm writing this one, I'm keeping it in check a little bit better than I did with the first two fiction novels. So yes, my process has completely changed different and became a little bit more involved where I can't just sit down and write like you would talk. They just kind of come out. Now ideas come out of my head as far as writing them down a lot slower and a lot more detailed. And then the nonfiction. So the creative nonfiction one here, this one, basically I had to learn how to write in a voice that was not fiction. When you're writing fiction, you can lead the reader. You can be like, I'm leading you on. I'm trying to take you down this path and make you think this way. I think I had you read this like 5 times and you were like, you have to add more. And I'm like, what? It was like 5. It's not enough. It's not enough because I wasn't giving you. So I had to literally be like, this is what I'm saying. Da 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 da. And this one I had to get because I don't have a degree yet. I got several archaeologists, two that we've done a podcast with. Well, not like we did a live session during 2020 with two of the
Authors.
Australia. Yes, they were archaeologists and they are authors as well, but they're from Australia. We got two of those gentlemen to go on a podcast with us, or a live session. And then I have the Dr. Samir who found the Bosnian pyramid. I got him to kind of look over my theories, and then he's the one that gave me the Serbian Tesla expert who understands the engineering and the process of finding torsion energy. So I got connections through that. So all those people were a part of that, not to mention when MUFON called me and said, hey, you're onto something. You need to write this down. So that's my process as far as how that goes.
My process is just being excited. I mean, yeah, when you nonfiction and fiction, it is a bit different. I always say, and you hear this, show don't tell when you're writing fiction. I always feel like I'm telling when I'm writing a nonfiction because I feel like I'm teaching a workshop. So I have to tell you each step. Whereas if I get into a story, I let my mind wander and go into a great fantasy of whatever fiction novel I'm doing, but I want to show you. I want you to vividly see it. And I'm not so worried about that in a nonfiction book. So, and I've written about 30 of each, so I'm kind of well versed in both. My writing skills still suck, but I send that to Rich, so I'm not too worried about it.
Yeah. So basically, what we want to take from this podcast, which we're trying to share, is that you need to get it down. However you get it down, don't worry about like the process in the beginning. Just get your words down, and then you can kind of learn how to navigate those and brainstorm and stuff like that. Which the very next podcast we're doing, the next episode, we're going to get a little bit more in depth how we brainstorm, how we outline, how we take notes, and that different ways that we do this, and like what apps are we using, what programs are we using. Before we even send it to the editor, before it even gets to that point. So that's what our next episode is going to be about.
Yeah, and so the bottom line, if you're starting a book today, just get started. Don't write today and then forget about it because you got to go to a soccer game or you're working late. This is something you feel inside of you, and it's something that you're creating your own child. You're bringing creativity to life. So make it a part of your life. Do a little bit of it every day. Set a specific time. Yes,
yeah,
exactly.
Even if it's a sentence.
Exactly. And like I told you way back when, I just kept notebooks. I'd be driving an hour and a half to work. I'd show up to work before we started, like, got an idea. And I'd write it down really quick. So don't do that. Do it in a nap.
Or like sometimes when I have an idea and I don't have time to write it down, with the technology we have today, like I'll just shoot Jamie a voice to text message that says book idea, and I'll put it down and he'll throw it into our Google Docs or something. We just don't want Jamie doing that because when
that's what I was going to say. I do it, but then you have to learn to read gibberish.
Like, what was that word?
Yes.
What was the Appalachian slang?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm speaking hick. So, yes, text-to-speech does not like me. Yes. So, there you have it. Get started, and we will see you soon.
All right. Have a great time, and always write.
Always write.